Good evening. It's 6:02. We'll go ahead and start the meeting. Let's please take row.
Commissioner Lide,
Present.
Commissioner Diaz,
Present.
Commissioner Bray,
Here.
Commissioner Wagner, Commissioner Kreiner,
Here.
Vice Chair Hardy, and Chair Vang.
Here, thank you. Next, we'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand. Ready? Begin. Next, I'll go ahead and read the procedures for the meeting. This meeting is being conducted in person and electronically. The public may participate in tonight's meeting by using the Zoom link provided on the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that all virtual participants will be on mute until they are called upon by the chair, at which point they will be unmuted. If you're a member of the public and would like to comment on an item, use the raise hand function on Zoom. And to avoid any confusion, please wait for the item you desire to comment on to be called by the chair before electronically raising your hand. For each matter considered by the commission, there will first be a staff presentation, followed by a presentation for the project applicant. Testimony from supporters of the project will then be taken, followed by testimony from those in opposition. The applicant will have the right to a final rebuttal presentation prior to closing the public hearing. In accordance with Section 13 of Article 2 of the Planning Commission Rules and Regulations governing the length of public debate, all public testimony from those in support and in opposition of the project will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The 3 lights on the podium next to the microphone will indicate the amount of time remaining for the speaker. The green light will be turned on when the speaker begins. Yellow light will come on with the self-bell ring when 1 minute is remaining. The speaker should be completing the testimony by the time the red light comes on with the final bell indicating time has expired. All in-person public testimony must be presented to the commission at the podium. Any testimony that references race, religion, ethnicity, economic status, national origin, or any other classification protected under state or federal law in a derogatory manner shall be deemed irrelevant and will not be considered by the commission in making its land use determinations. If you challenge these land use matters in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised in oral or written testimony or before the close of the hearing. We'll start today's meeting with the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We're going to go ahead and let's see if there's any changes first, guys.
Good evening, Chair Vang, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Israel Trejo with the Planning and Development Department. There are no changes to the agenda. It's our understanding that the applicant will be requesting to continue consent item 5A. I don't see him here in the audience. They may be on Zoom. If they do request that continuance, staff is in support of that continuance of new consent item 5A relative to tract 6346. Thank you.
All right, thank you. No, you're fine. Let's go ahead and can we open, do we have any public comments on the agenda?
We do.
Go ahead, please state your name, address.
Good evening, Chair Vang, Commissioners. This is Drew Phelps here representing Granville Homes, address 1306 West Herndon in Fresno. As staff mentioned, we are requesting a continuance on item 5A. We really appreciate staff getting this item before you quickly. Unfortunately, as you might remember, about a month ago, there was an item where we had an issue with a specific condition and appealed that to council. That appeal hearing is going to be September 14th. So, we're hoping for resolution at that point and then would ask that this item be returned to come before you at the September 20th meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a motion by the commission to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Hardy, a second by Commissioner Diaz. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next, we'll go ahead and move to reports by the commissioners. Do we have any? I see none. We'll go ahead and move to continue matters. This one is item ID 231286. we're going to go and continue this. We'll have staff go ahead and do a quick summary of the item itself. Just want to reiterate that we went ahead and closed all public comments. So we'll have staff do a quick summary. We'll go ahead and take input from the applicant and the appellant in regards to any progress that they made in between the meetings. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Chair Vang, Commissioners. Philip Segrist, Planning Manager with the Planning and Development Department. As you did mention, this item is being continued from July 19th when it was first considered. And we do have a very brief presentation, more of a summary recap, and Thomas Veach, the staff planner, is online via Zoom, and he will make that presentation there, and I'll be available for any technical comments or questions.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Thomas Veach with the Planning and Development Department. The item for consideration tonight is conditional use permit P22-03146. As mentioned, this item was continued from the meeting of July 19th, 2023. As a quick recap, the project proposes a congregate living health facility through the remodel of an existing single-family home and construction of 2 additional buildings as part of a future phase of development. The project is located south of West Bullard Avenue between North Van Ness Boulevard and North Faulkner Avenue. West Morris Avenue is located adjacent to the property to the south. Existing single-family homes are located north and east of the project site. The property west of the project is vacant. Malik Elementary School is located south on the opposite side of West Morris Avenue. On August 23rd, 2023, the applicant conducted an initial meeting with the neighborhood to discuss the project. A summary is attached to the staff report as Exhibit N, and the applicant is available after my presentation to discuss the meeting that took place and provide a summary. There's been additional comments that have been received since the last hearing, one of which from the appellant is available as part of the staff report. The rest are available as part of a packet that was handed out. Several of these letters were received today, and they were past the 24-hour cutoff period, but we have provided them anyway. These letters included 3 letters in opposition and 1 letter of support for the project. During the previous hearing, there were questions and discussion about the use classification of the proposed project. As identified in the report, according to state law, a congregate living health facility is considered a residential home and specifically required to provide a non-institutional home-like environment. Further, per the state law, the city is required to process the application of a congregate living health facility as a conditional use permit application, regardless of the zoning ordinance of the city. For reference, had this project proposed 6 beds or fewer, they would explicitly be considered a residential use and require no entitlement. While, as I stated, the project is required to be processed as a CUP, the project was still analyzed for compliance with the Fresno Municipal Code, and as the city would consider it a residential care facility, as that is the closest applicable use classification. While the residential care facility classification states that services provided are primarily non-medical care, by definition, a congregate living health facility can provide a range of other services, such as supportive care, pharmacy, dietary, social or recreational needs, services for persons who are mentally alert, with physical disabilities, who may be ventilator dependent, and services for persons who have a diagnosis of a terminal illness, or services for persons who are catastrophically and severely disabled. The residential care facility classification per the Fresno Municipal Code also includes other uses such as hospices, nursing homes, and convalescent facilities, which are also uses that can provide medical care, and which uses are similar to the proposed use. Based upon that analysis, classification of this project as a congregate living health facility closest meets the use classification of residential care facility per the FMC. Therefore, the project is consistent with the municipal code. Based on this analysis, staff's recommendation is to recommend adoption of the environmental assessment. And the recommendation is to deny the appeal and uphold the original action to approve the project. And then, as I mentioned, the applicant is in the audience and prepared to answer any questions about the neighborhood meeting, as well as questions about the use of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission to staff? Let's please have the applicant. If you can, please give us a summary. Let us know if you held meetings with the Appellant or that area, and give us a progress and update of what actually went on to, please.
Sure. My name is Brian Whelan. I'm on behalf of the applicant. I'm one of the partners. My partners are also here present with me in the audience, and there are some other neighbors that have come in support of this project. I understand that there's not going to be public comment, but I just wanted to point that out. We had a meeting on August 23rd at the Malik Elementary School, and there were about 14 families or homes that were represented in that meeting. The meeting did start off in kind of a rocky direction. People wanted to have their voices heard and their opinions made known. But it did conclude on a pretty good note, actually. And the way that we had concluded the meeting was by our group making an offer as a concession that if the neighborhood would get behind this project, that the neighborhood, that we would reduce the size from 3 to 2. But one thing that was very important that came up during that conversation with the neighbors is I read to the neighbors sections from the Health and Safety Code, section 1250, because I think that it's very important for the neighbors to understand that this is a residential facility with the look and feel of a house. So we're putting homes together. It's a home. And I read to the neighbors section 1250, part I, which specifically defined what a congregate living health facility meant. And by the code, it specifically means a residential home. That's what it says in the code. The code also identifies what other types of facilities are, for instance, a hospital, an acute facility, and others that we are not, or nor are we asking. So we addressed that so that we could make people aware that the aesthetics were going to be consistent with the neighborhood and what the look and feel would be. The other, of course, as we pointed out to the neighbors, the significant height of the wall. And I think some of the pictures that we've submitted here demonstrate that this wall between Malik and the property is about 8.5 feet tall, okay? So it's higher than my hand is right now. From Malik, you cannot see into the property, and there are some pictures that show that you can't see out to any of the neighbors. And we talked about the issues that concerned some of the neighbors, specifically with respect to the traffic that was there at Malik. And one of the reasons why we chose this site, which is so important, not to mention the significant need in this area, there are very few to none, and there's a tremendous need. There was a neighbor that was going to talk about how there's 68 families that are waiting for beds in this area for conjugate care facilities, or congregate care facilities. And the ingress and egress was something that was discussed because there was a concern about traffic. Our ingress and egress is going to be off of Bullard. So it's well situated because the traffic comes in and out off of Bullard for the ingress and egress. The other two are for emergency vehicles only, and that was something that was made clear. I also supplied to Mr. Andrew Wanger a copy of the traffic report after the meeting that we had conducted and studied. I supplied that to another neighbor, Renee, and then also to another individual, Sean, so that they could analyze that too. The traffic report that we produced and studied is consistent with what is seen in the staff report at page 7 of the findings. So at the conclusion of the meeting, Mr. Wanger, I saw his letter. He wrote that there was some friction. He left before it concluded. At the conclusion of the meeting, I was actually thanked for my demeanor and disposition, and there was some back and forth about, you know, people being passionate about it, and hopefully we can work together. And so we made whether he liked it or not, Andrew Wanger, who's in opposition here, but we made him kind of the go-between or intermediary, and he was very gracious enough to do that. I communicated with him afterwards in email, and I suggested, here's some points that we could, like we talked about, that seemed to be going in the right direction, that we would agree to if there would be a withdrawal of the opposition. And Mr. Wanger talked to some of the other neighbors that are, together and cohesive, and he said that, regrettably, that's not something that we can get behind. Some neighbors just don't want this. And so that was regrettably, kind of where things stood. And so what we had sent to staff, which is a recap in its Exhibit N, is essentially what I just stated, and that's that we had a conversation. There was some rocky starts, but at the end, I think that people were very congenial and civil and agreed to make some progress. It turns out that we're at an impasse, but nominally, we did address some of these issues and misconcerns significantly with respect to the residential home aspect. It's a home. And also with respect to the aesthetics, again, a home. And then the traffic that's coming off of Bullard. Does the commission have any questions about any of that?
Do we have any questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll go ahead and maybe please have the appellant. Please go ahead and provide us a summary and any progress that you guys have made.
Good evening. Andrew Wanger. I'm a resident of 2330 West Roberts. Mr. Whelan, I think, has accurately summarized the meeting that took place. There were, I believe, more than 14 people there. Not a single person in support of the project was there. And what was made clear in their letter that was submitted to the commission is the CUP that's being voted on has not been amended. The intent is for 3 buildings, subdivided lots, ingress, egress into the Malik Morris Avenue entrance, to Sequoia, and from Bullard. So we discussed as a neighborhood the fact that there was no lot in our neighborhood with 3 buildings. The zoning code never mentions 3 buildings in an RS2 designated neighborhood. There's only 2 buildings. So the group did discuss the possibility of reducing down to 2 buildings when we floated the possibility of a single building, very similar to Bullard and Fruit, where there's a care facility that's been constructed there, Faulkner, just below Barstow. These are all single building modifications of residences. That is not what they are proposing. They are proposing to build 14,000 square feet, 3 buildings and parking lots with minimal landscaping. So unfortunately, the neighbors were not persuaded that there were any guarantees that 2 buildings would become 3, that the subdivided lot would not occur, even though we discussed these. So from our point of view, we are now faced with a modification under the zoning code that, in my view, the planning or the city attorney's office has failed to comply with the municipal code. An RCFE cannot contain ventilators. That is in Title 22 of the California Code of Regulations. So it's inapposite to try to shoehorn this facility as an RCFE. And if you look at 15-902, nowhere is a congregate care facility listed. When that omission occurs, the applicant then needs to submit a petition to classify it under 15-5020 of the municipal code. No petition is in the record. There's no application by the director that this use is permitted under the municipal code. So we're supposed to trust that this is going to be built, that it's going to be perfect and become a harmonious part of our neighborhood. This group has never built one in Fresno. They can't point us to a building. They've never operated one, and yet they want to take a single-family residential lot and put 3 medical buildings with 54 residents. So we're not in favor of that. We remain opposed. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I do have a question. You mentioned there's other single building facilities near there. What is the size of the lot of those single buildings ones versus this one, the lot that this one's on? What's the difference between the lot size?
So there's a very large, it's got to be over 1.25 acres. It's Sierra and Marks, single facility. Fruit and board, I don't know the size of the lot. It's not my burden to prove that these people are doing the right thing. They have the burden to persuade us, but this lot is definitely bigger, I don't know by what factor, than the lot at Fruit and Board and the lot south of Barstow. But the lot south of Barstow is probably 3/4 acre, and this is 1.25 acres, I believe. But there's no lot from Van Ness to Keats, Faulkner to Van Ness with 3 4,000-foot structures on it.
Thank you.
Completely transmogrifies our neighborhood.
Any other questions? Thank you.
One issue that, when we came to this meeting in July, you were all here. There was significant opposition during the meeting. Not one person spoke in favor of this, aside from the development group. At the end of that meeting, there was what I can only describe as a bizarre motion to approve the permit. Since that, we've discovered that Mr. Hardy, who made that motion, has donated over $1,700 to one of the developers in his political campaign. That was not disclosed to anybody. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. My apologies, but there's no public comments. Can we have the appellant, not the appellant, but the applicant? Do you have any comments? The major concern, it seems like, from the appellant too, is in that discussion, the original intent to build 3 buildings. How do you make sure that instead of having 3 buildings, if the compromise is having 2 buildings, how do you go ahead and give them that guarantee that it's going to be 2, and then all of a sudden you go ahead and you push it through and you build 3 instead?
Well, the proposal, like any compromise, was that if they lay down arms and we agree to cooperate with one another, that we would do 2 buildings. And they said no. In fact, the following day, I had a conversation with a neighbor, and he said, I don't care what you want to do. I don't care at all. I don't want it in my backyard. I want it in South Fresno. I want it next to the hospital. I don't want it here. There's no reason for it. It's just that they didn't want it. And, one of the things, when lawyers die, or when normal people die, they're buried 6 feet under, but when attorneys die, they're buried 12 feet under. It's because deep down, they're good people.
Brian, that's my joke.
Oh,
Sorry. The one joke
I think
know.
Mr. Wanger and I were both members of the bar. We both practice law, and we're both zealously advocating for a position. And I think he's a great person, and I don't feel otherwise. But I think that what is it that we're really fighting for, though, really? And we have Matt Brown in the audience, who's a resident that's just around the corner. And he wrote me a letter this morning that made me cry about his sister and having to take his sister to a facility in Modesto that Irvin Marquez, who is among our group, is involved with and one of the owners. There's nothing here. I mean, and then I had a conversation last night with Jenny McKellen in the back, who turned me on to, there's a group, I forget the name of it, that caters to children, and they told me about 68 families waiting for beds with they're non-ambulatory. It takes a tremendous toll on these families that don't have a location to bring their children. They don't have a location to bring their adult kids. And it is extremely difficult. And I even shared with the group when we all met together that I myself had a daughter. I've had 2 daughters that have been on respirators for months when they were born. The first time, it was so difficult for me that my body stopped producing white blood cells. It's that much grief, and there is no place in this area for it. And this is a uniquely well-situated place. And to the question, we want to be good stewards and good neighbors. But if you look at these walls, is the other thing, you'll see that they can't even see into these from Malik. And on the other side on Bullard, it is ingress and egress, which accommodates their requests. And it's not something that's going to add to the traffic there. In fact, we studied it and we submitted that.
Hey, guys, let's go ahead
In
and...
a way that's non-compliant with the zoning, which is at page 7 if they're wanting to read it.
Well, let's, do we have any questions? Any additional questions? Thank you. Can we take a 5-minute recess? Just need to have a discussion with legal. Is that fine? Let's go ahead and, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. Let's go ahead and resume the meeting at 6:33, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the patience. We'll go ahead and resume the meeting at 6:33. Had too much Mexican food last night. Just kidding. All right, we're gonna go ahead and bring this back to us. Do we have any questions and comments by the commission?
I would like the staff to clarify the zoning again, because we're hearing one thing from the appellant and another thing from staff. So if we could get that clarified, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Philip Segrist will clarify that, but Jose, can you bring up the PowerPoint again? And Philip will let you know what slide.
Yeah, so the project is propose a congregate living health facility. Per the municipal code, we do not have a specific definition or use identified in the development code for us to process that specific request. However, state law does direct either the county or the city, in this case, to process applications for congregate health living facilities as a conditional use permit. So therefore, state's directing us to process this as a CUP, and so processing it per the municipal code, since there isn't a specific use that's directly in line with that, we then kind of looked at what's the next nearest close, most appropriate use to classify that as, and that would be the residential care facility. And residential care facilities are also happen to be permitted with a conditional use permit.
Philip, can you clarify, what is the zoning of the parcel?
Yeah, the zoning is RS2, and that's a low-density residential.
Thank you.
Question is, are we able to, in order for us to accept the appeal, we have to make an actual finding, correct?
If you choose to uphold the appeal and override the director's determination, you would need to make the findings, which are located, let me find them for you. Municipal code findings are in exhibit. K. So if you'll turn to Exhibit K of your packet. All right, so finding A, the proposed use is allowed within the applicable zoning district and complies with all other applicable provisions of this code and all other chapters of the municipal code. Finding B, the proposed use is consistent with the general plan and any other applicable plan and design guideline the city has adopted. Finding C, the proposed use will not be substantially adverse to the public health, safety, or general welfare of the community, nor be detrimental to surrounding properties or improvements. Finding D, the design, location, size, and operating characteristics of the proposed activity are compatible with the existing and reasonably foreseeable future land uses in the vicinity. Finding E, the site is physically suitable for the type, density, and intensity of use being proposed, including access, emergency access, utilities, and services required. Finding F, the Fresno County Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan adopted by the Fresno County Airport Land Use Commission pursuant to California Public Utilities Section. That is the final finding. So there are 6 findings.
And are we, go ahead.
And if you must be able to find consistency, application is consistent with the purposes of all 6 of those findings. If you choose not to, you'll need to have evidence in the record for that.
Okay. And then in regards to, are we able to put certain limitations can we, instead of having 3 buildings on there, can we go ahead and require them to amend this CUP to only allow for 2?
You may, through the conditional use process permit, in this application process here, when you make your recommendation, you may modify the conditions of approval. So you could modify the conditions of approval to restrict the size of the structures, the number of structures, the setbacks, the height, the landscaping, anything that is a feature of the project. You could reduce it. You may not expand upon it without further evaluation.
Okay, so you can't expand. Okay. And then with us being the planning commission, we're making this recommended adoption to the city council.
No,
No?
this is a final determination unless it is, if whatever your decision is, yes, no, or something in between, if the council member of the district or the mayor appeals it to the council, that is the only way it could go beyond where you are today.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much for the clarification. Do we have any comments by the commission or any motion?
Oh, no, make your comment. I love your comment.
Commissioner
I
Kreiner?
do have a comment, Brother Moderator and Brother Chair. There was a public comment that was sent in that I would like to read if it's okay, sir.
Yes, that's fine.
My wife and family built and have lived in our home half a block from the terrible proposed project on Bullard Avenue for 35 years. It is not zoned for such use and will bring down the values of all homes in the area. And each of you knows that the objections Mr. Wagner has presented are all true and warranted. It is very clear. Whoever votes yes on this project will be remembered and replaced ASAP. This is our backyard, and we will not forget if you vote in favor of violating our zoning laws. Said individuals. Brother Moderator, this is not acceptable, and to each of you in the general public as well. Please understand that threats are not something that should be taken lightly, and there is a responsibility that we have up here, but there is also a responsibility that I believe that you all have as our community. We don't take this lightly, and we don't just do things out of favor of people nor out of fear. And you should never attempt to use tactics of fear in order to get your way, whether wrong or right. We are not only law-abiding citizens, but we also are citizens of this city that we all serve together. And we take time, every time we are called on a Wednesday night, to come out here and to do a task that many people seem as impossible, or some just don't seem as if it's fair. We have families, but not only families, we also have a responsibility to serve each of you in our communities. My ask is that things like this never happen again, because, and please understand, we don't cast a vote based on the biasness of an email or whether or not we believe that the email is a threat or not. We do it because we believe what is right needs to be done right, and what is wrong we need to turn down. So for the said individual, and out of respect for my faith and who I am as a community leader and member, I won't release the name, even though it is public record. I won't say it up here. But please know, that is not the way we should talk to each other, especially community, speaking to those that are sitting on this diocese that has a responsibility. Please know that we operate as much in fairness, but also in love, because we care, not because we're easily threatened. And please know, many of us are not easily shaken. And as the smallest, skinniest person on this platform, I'll tell you, you can't shake people that have already been shaken but have never fallen. God bless you.
I'd like to add to, again, we're not mentioning names, but the person who wrote that, I considered a friend of mine at one time. I haven't seen them in a while, but it was personally hurtful to be threatened like that, so.
All right, so do we have any comments or motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the staff's recommendation to adopt the environmental assessment and deny the appeal, but I would like to put a condition that the applicant agrees they will only put 2 homes on this property, including that they won't later subdivide it and put a 3rd home on the other part of the property. I don't know if that's too long or too confusing.
You can put that on there. There can be an application in the future. There are 3, so this property is large enough to be parceled out, but it would have to go through the same process. So your condition is that it would need to go back through this process to make any change. So there would be public notification, et cetera.
Okay.
We have a motion by, well, before we go ahead and make any second motions, do we have any commission who needs to? No. Okay. Do we have a second?
I would definitely second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion made by Commissioner Bray. We have a second by Commissioner Diaz. Let's go ahead and take vote, please.
Commissioner Lydé,
I'm in favor.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Commissioner Bray,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreiner,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hardy,
Abstain.
and Chair Bang.
Yes. Motion passes. All right, next we have, do we have any reports by the Secretary?
Good evening, Commission. A few months ago, you had a presentation by the chairs of the local planning committee for the California APA chapter conference that would be held here in Fresno. That conference is coming up rapidly, so it will begin a week from Saturday. And we are excited to announce that we have nearly 1,100 individuals coming to Fresno for the conference. And we are happy as a community to host planners from across the state and encourage them to take advantage of all that Fresno and the Fresno area has to offer. We have a beautiful community and we're looking forward to showing it off. And for the community who hasn't had an opportunity, if they are interested in a planning conference, there are registrations still available. And that's the end of my commentary. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. It is currently 6:46. We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Everyone, have a good night.